Darn, Charles. Once again, when I hit the go button, I remember I meant to get us some version of that song, In Your Eyes, because this famous movie where John Cusack is holding up the stereo. Today we're going to say anything but NATO, Article 5 style. Oh, all right. How are you, Charles? It's like kosher style. You can order a cheeseburger.
Yeah. That's like when I went to one of those Jewish delis in New York as a kid, I ordered a ham and cheese sandwich with mayo on rye. And they looked at me like, what? And I said, all right, no ham. I said, okay, I'll take a cheese sandwich with mayo. This kid is just dumb. Anyway.
It's almost like a Jerry Lewis sketch.
Yeah, it was. Well, my parents didn't think it was funny. But anyway, no, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I decided to actually hire a personal trainer, and I did my first thing, and then I did my follow-up yesterday. And this guy is really good. I mean, he's built like a brick, and he's actually just turning 50. And he got his start as a martial arts expert, which he teaches. But he also is a chef, so he's good on nutrition. So he's got me, and he also is extremely good at explaining why this exercise makes sense in another, et cetera. So I'm all in. But with that, exercising muscles that had not been exercised for a long time caused me to go to sleep at about 8.
That's all right. Will you be taking up karate soon?
No. I'm just focusing on, getting my weight, turning fat into muscle, which means you're not going to lose that much weight if you do it.
Right.
But then after I have less fat, then trying to get the weight down.
Well,
I've already gotten
everybody has noticed you look tremendously fit. Certainly the healthiest since I've known you. So congratulations on that. But
thank you.
People want to hear your input, Charles, on this meeting with all these European dopes at the White House and how they couldn't shut up about the number one thing that Russia has already said repeatedly. Not only would they not tolerate, but was essentially the basis for the beginning of this war, the insertion of NATO into Ukraine. They can't get past this.
Yeah. Well, there's something called the Mercator projection. And for map lovers will know what that is. That's a convention that this map dude, Gerard Mercator, I think it was, in trying to produce maps of all the continents, a decision was taken to make Africa seem smaller than it really is, and make Europe seem much bigger than it really is. And that's really a delusion that the Europeans have had for centuries, that the center of the earth is either in Frankfurt or London or Paris, and it's just not. First of all, I think it is only 30% of the surface of the planet is land. So you look at that map, and that's obviously wrong, right? I mean, it's much more than 30% of that projection is shown as being land. So as far as post-World War II Europe is concerned, and obviously to write the history of post-World War II Europe, we'd be talking until January or later, nonstop. But in brief terms, in summary terms, the former colonializing powers have been struggling like crazy to hold on to a semblance of power and influence in this new globalist superstructure. I mean, to be honest, the Security Council should be completely, if we want to keep the UN, should be completely changed. And small countries like France and England or whatever, there's no way they deserve to be on the Security Council. So these people have not only got extra influence politically, but they're not shouldering their economic burdens. Their economies are shrinking. They're overladen with government bureaucracy. They have seemingly now embraced censorship and foolish ideas like climate change and disinformation governance and things like this. They're all in for that. And what they don't realize is this fellow I mentioned to you on the phone, Jason, Pepe Escobar, has a great piece actually in Zero Hedge on this. This was, nobody really yet knows what Trump and Putin talked about alone, right? And I have a sneaking suspicion that it was welcome to the big boy table, Vlad. You know, we would really like to have, you know, we're quite close to you, as you know, it's not that far away from Russia to where we meet in Alaska. We believe, I can imagine Trump or his team saying, we believe that many of the pro-Biden, pro-Obama, unregulated globalist European governments are a problem. They're not our enemy, but they're a serious problem. And they have compounded the mess and are compounding the mess in Ukraine and many other places. They are not, you know, they live in glass houses and they're throwing stones. I mean, they have the ability, they have a lot of, in theory, wealth on paper and cultural history and treasures. But instead of protecting their borders, they're allowing criminals and people who want to bring down civilization, forget if it's Western or Russian, into their borders. They're not making, they share a problem with you, frankly, in Russia, that you're not reproducing yourselves. You're not, for some reason, you're not growing your populations the way you could, given Russia's vast size. But as I, Trump, think about, I can imagine him saying, as I think about the process of forging a peace here, the biggest obstacles to peace are Ursula von der Leyen and her ridiculous collection of buffoons in the EU, and people like the leader of Germany, who's on his way out and trying to cancel the possibility of the most popular movement inside Germany to run. They've already taken the leading candidate in France and say you can't run for president. So we've got a fork in the road here, and the Europeans are making it easy for us to say, you know what, no alliance for you. You know, we 1945 was 80 freaking years ago. You know, you have been not shouldering your fair share of anything in Europe, and yet you try to weasel your way in, as they just did, into this meeting in Washington, D.C. You know, 7 uninvited people should have been sitting not at the table, but Trump should have made a little boy and girl table in the same room and put them on these little kindergarten chairs and let them sit over there. So, you know, I have long said, I remember I went on Bloomberg TV in 2011. I was still doing a lot of Bloomberg, and Europe was under stress because, as usual, to try to compete with our American banks, what they do is in boom times, they see anything that we're doing and they do a riskier version. You know, they offer clients a better deal than we might offer. And then when things go the other way, they find themselves in a position where they have to sell out at a loss of their positions, and their banking system comes under stress. So this was an interview to discuss that, and they asked me, well, what did I think they should do? And I said, actually, the smartest thing to do, this is before the idiots in Germany and in Berlin decided to leap off a cliff and say, we're going to, no more fossil fuels, no more nuclear. We're just going to do wind and solar and stuff like that without having any capacity in wind and solar. So they shut down their nuclear reactors. Anyway, before that happened, I said the smartest thing for Germany to do would be to pull out of the EU. And I've seldom in a broadcast have I heard there were several hosts, they gasped. They could not believe that I would say something like that on television, on a mainstream channel. But it's true. The EU is the largest economy Germany is the largest economy inside the EU. And the EU is a failed project. It's a gigantic bureaucracy with crooked grifters at the top of it, none of whom are truly elected, the people running it. And why do you need these idiots? I mean, 80 million people is a fair number, 85, whatever Germany is a fairly big-sized country. Yes, poor Slovenia will be on its own or whatever, but I mean, that's what happens when you decide to have a country that's only 17 million. I mean, I'd rather see a process, as a former merger and acquisition dude, where countries discuss merging with one another. You know, they go and they say, look, you've got a capital here and a bureaucracy, and you've got one over here. Why don't we shrink our government?
Reduce cost. Yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard has just announced that she's shrinking the Office of DNI by 50% without a merger. It's fantastic.
Just getting rid of all the liars and spies and moles. Right. It'll probably work better.
Right. That would be a more sensible project than saying you keep all your national bureaucracies. So you've got all these cabinet meetings and whatever, photo ops and lunches and dinners and fundraisers and whatever, award ceremonies and all that crap. No, you know, to go back and say, you know, maybe we could piece together a more vibrant country if we, you know, merge this country with that country, not by military, but by negotiation.
Pretty smart here, Charles. Tulsi Gabbard is announcing ODNI 2.0. Very modern sounding, and she's going to reduce the bloat by 40%.
Yeah, and she says 50% in spending.
That's good.
That's fantastic. And if it's possible to do that, I mean, you could debate whether having, you know, a Department of National Intelligence run by a whole bunch of stupid people until now makes any sense. But, you know, is that critical? Yes or no? I don't know. It's certainly more critical than the department, the Office of Gender Equality, whatever that was called. So anyway, I think NATO has long been at a tipping point, and the decision, frankly, taken, I believe, under Clinton, when Putin wanted to join NATO. It might have been under Bush, but you know, why wouldn't we have said, "Bingo, let's do that"? Right? You basically eliminate Russia as a threat by doing that if it's done properly, and instead they say, no. We want to go and break every promise we made to the former Soviet Union, then the Russian Federation.
It's the adult version of "you can't sit with us."
Exactly. I mean, an inspired choice by our creative department.
Yeah. Well, you know, Charles, as you are speaking, it really does occur to me that I forget who the idiot was, maybe John Bolton criticizing Trump for having this meeting in Alaska because no, it was McFaul saying that Trump doesn't understand Russia and doesn't understand that Russia's pissed off that they sold Alaska to the United States or whatever and they want it back. I don't think that's correct. I think Russia's got more on its plate than it can handle right now. They don't want more undeveloped territory that they can't govern. I think Trump did it to show, as you say, that we're closer together than we are far apart. And there's areas certainly of common interest where we can have common projects and common benefits. And why don't we focus on that rather than what we don't like about each other or whatever?
Right. And I remember, actually, I was one of the early people to do this on Wall Street. When you sell a company, it sounds like, oh, you know, easy, just sell, you know, some sirloin steak to a housewife. It's easy. No, it's not. It's very complicated because normally you don't really know the actual position of the company and the level of detail that a buyer is going to want to know it. So the way they used to do it, and I promise this is relevant to the discussion, the way we used to do it is you'd send out a summary book without a lot of information, you know, critical information, because buyers could be window shopping just to get competitive information. And then you winnow it down to a serious group of 6, 8, 10, or whatever. And then you try to surface the highest indicative price. And then after that, you give a contract and you get the reaction to the contract without the supporting details and schedules, because that's competitive information. And then once you get the best contract, you show the buyer the schedules and, you know, you ink the deal. And that's a lengthy process. That can take, you know, 9 months, 15 months, or whatever. And I said early on, I said, why are we doing this? That's you're going letter of intent, memorandum of understanding to maybe you have a deal to whatever. And Trump, looking at this with his team, said, you know, Europeans all want, first they want a ceasefire, then they want this, then they want some other time to have more meetings and banquets and parties and travel and blah, blah, blah. Fuck that. Let's just go to a peace agreement, a final peace agreement. That's exactly what I did selling companies. I said, you know, these people that we're dealing with, give them a draft contract with the schedules.
Yeah.
you know.
You know
And
how much I like that European style of let's have a meeting to talk about the
right,
meeting and then schedule another meeting for next week where you could fly back and forth. I was like, what?
yeah, right. It's all a project to get frequent flyer miles if they're flying,
Right.
they're not flying private, and pal around with mistresses and toy boys or whatever it is that they have. Yeah, it's a whole. These people. The first reaction of most, not all Europeans, but the many Europeans, is to listen to you to the extent they have the time to do that, as if you're a potted plant that needs water. That you don't know anything, you don't appreciate the nuances of European thinking. Yeah, European thinking has gotten you into a shit pond. You know,
Well, it's very
we need to
condescending, right? Frequently, Europeans, they think they're
often.
smarter than us.
Well, it starts from this thing that we can never change. That most every European nation, powerful European nation, was a major nation well before America was an idea.
Right.
Now, actually, in the case of Germany, that's not true. I mean, Germany was unified in 1848, actually. Before that, it was Prussia.
Yeah.
Prussia, Saxony, this and that. But anyway, so I think this is a good thing. And, of course, the people at the Council on Foreign Relations, the Council on Going to European Parties, and the Council on Atlantic Bullshit, or the Atlantic Council, and Davos people, they're all, Jesus, what are we going to do? There is no Davos in Bali yet. Do we really want to give up this Klaus Schwab's mansion in Davos? And
well, now it's Fink running it, right?
Appropriately named. I would love to, even at my advanced age, and the fact that I've actually now for a number of months, I have spent more time in retirement than I spent working, which is pretty interesting. But anyway, I would love to go into one of these big companies and do, not GE, because I think that's a shithole, but, a company that can be resurrected. And I don't know if Eastman Kodak is one, or just pick one, and radically reimagine and rethink the way those companies run. So many of them are poorly run.
Yeah.
And now with, this is before AI and what you can do at low cost. The number of meetings that I had in my active career that were unnecessary is probably at least 50% with Zoom. At least, right? Because, in the olden days, there was no way to do this. Right. So, I remember many times I wasn't paying for it. I flew on the Concorde back and forth to London at least 10 times for something that could have been handled by a Zoom call.
Right.
And back in the day, a round trip Concorde to London was about 10,000 US back in the day. And so what would it be today? 25,000? Some large number.
When they shut it down, I think it was 14,000 in one direction.
Yeah, I don't remember. But
now, Charles, just to direct you to another interesting point, sorry to interrupt, but it's instructive to just even look at how the reporting on that meeting is going. You look at CBS, New York Times, etc. They say CBS says Trump, Zelensky, European leaders present a united front on Ukraine. I disagree with that because basically they were all saying like, oh, we're going to have Article 5 style. And Trump was like, well, I don't know. And then the Russian news is saying Trump dominated and humiliated the EU. So,
well, the Russians are right.
Again,
Trump is the alpha dog on the planet right now. Right. You want to get a big project done. You're not going to talk to Art Carney or whatever that idiot's name is in Canada. Right. Under Canadian leadership.
Mark.
We Carney. Are going to read.
That they should have Art Carney to get Norton. He could run Canada.
That would be so funny to have, Art Carney respond to these wokesters. That would be very, very funny. But anyway, so it's obvious to people with, more than, let's say, 50 IQ points that Donald Trump's opinion on major world issues is something you better listen to. Because, and what Pepe talks about in his piece is he believes that the Europeans were basically told, he writes in his piece, and I don't know how he knows this, we're not doing anything more financially with Ukraine until there's an audit on the money that's already been spent, and a real one, not a fake one. Not the kind, you can't use BKD on this. A real audit. And where did this money go? How much of it went to crooked NGOs? How much of it went directly into politicians and other people? How much of it was just simply stolen? Okay, and that is as he says, that if that really happened, if Trump really did that, then the New World Order is 2.0, right? Because with that simple request, then how can you say no? We're not going to do it. I mean, the Europeans will probably try to find a way to do it, but no, they're going to have a real audit here, and it's going to show a lot of grafts. And Zelensky's going to be implicated, and his backers are going to be implicated, and American politicians are going to be implicated. And the second thing he said apparently is, we see a way to do a peace deal here. And I don't know if he said it exactly this way. It's going to involve land for peace, and we want a peace deal. And going forward here, you're responsible for your own security. Pay for it yourselves. We're not doing it anymore. We're not borrowing money, as the article says, that our grandchildren may or may not be able to repay to support your ridiculous bullshit parties and festivals and self-destruction. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
And if he really did do that, if he really did, it's okay. If he really did do that, then the world has changed. And especially if he's serious now about following the money. Because at the same time, I'm hearing from multiple credible sources that something is up now with the Clinton Foundation and with these other charities. And it's not just the Clinton Foundation, it's also the Obama Foundation and other presidential libraries. So, and other brand name charities that have been stealing money for decades. So the swamp, I think, should be nervous, and Trump better have excellent protection, because, and we as Americans need to think carefully about what sort of intelligence we share with the Europeans and any other foreign nation, because we saw how the intelligence apparatus went after Trump on completely spurious grounds. That John McCain was centrally involved in that. May he rest in a hydrochloric acid bath for the rest of his life, his existence. But he was a turncoat rhino who was, I think, threatened by what Trump represented. He was only too eager to push with Hillary Clinton this Russia collusion delusion. And even now, people on the left still believe this Russian collusion delusion. For Barr, as he did, to testify, I think it was to Comer, that there's nothing in the Epstein file implicating Trump, and making the further point, if there had been, don't you think Biden and his team would have leaked it out? For Barr to say that.
But the thing is, Bill Barr is a constantly lying fatso. I don't think there is anything in there. That logic holds. And also, why wouldn't they have brought it up 8 years ago? They would have known about this forever. So but still, William Barr is a fat ass and a liar.
Right.
One quick thing, Charles, because we've only got about another minute here, and we had Bob Katie brought up an interesting point when you were talking about Art Carney running Canada. Mark Carney considers himself European and doesn't wear the Canadian lapel pin and considers Canadians his peons. And you know what? That makes sense, because Canada, or at least Canada's government, has kind of pulled back from close ties to America. And it makes sense that he would want, they speak French in certain parts of Canada, want to be more like socialists in Europe, or at least the government doesn't censor everybody and don't let you go into the woods and stuff.
Yeah, it's sad. In my case, there's a town in Canada, it's a small town called Spencerville, that was founded by my family. And, it's in Ontario. There's actually now I think a jazz festival there, or some kind of festival in the summer. And I've been there once. It's an interesting place. The buildings are mostly stone. From the early 1800s, whereas just across the whatever river it is that separates eventually Spencerville from New York State, most of the early buildings are wood, And this is a place where loyalists in the American conflict, revolution, where loyalists fled. In this particular strand were loyalists. But
do a road trip there sometime, Charles. But we need to make our way over to the First Amendment Forum right now. People are going to be able to join us on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. And of course, people who are following me on X at JG_CSTT. Thanks to everybody who sponsors the show. Big win in the world of counter lawfare yesterday. I won't be talking about that so much on this show, but I wouldn't be able to do it without your support and sponsorship. So thanks to everybody. And Charles, we'll be back in less than 5 minutes. So stay with us, everybody. There's a lot more to discuss.